All right, all right. Welcome everybody to Tea Time with LinkUp Chicago. My name is Darren Calhoun, and I have a few distinguished gentlemen, and I'll let them introduce themselves. Go for
After you, Kylan.
All right. Good evening, everybody. Good evening. My name is Kylan Hooks. I answer to any pronoun said with respect. I'm so happy to be here with you all tonight and ready to get into it. So I'm going to pass it on to Keith.
Hey, good evening, everybody. My name is Keith Green. I also will respond to any respectful pronouns with the caveat that I will understand when you're not being respectful. So, welcome.
well, there's that part, right? All right. So we are here. We're gathered. We are part of this effort called Link Up Chicago, which is an effort to build resources for our community, specifically for Black, gay, same gender loving men who are in Chicago. And so we're trying to create resources that are spiritually informed, that are accessible, that are aware of just our unique needs. And this show is a space where we want to have real conversations, help people think about the choices that they're making in their lives, and have a lot of fun. Like this is a kickback, a cool time. If you have questions, you can drop those into the chat, and we will see those and be able to respond. Um, but yeah, before we get a little bit more into that, I would love it if we could go around and just share a little bit more about the community work that we've been doing. For me, myself, I'm a lifelong Chicago resident, joining from the West Side, originally born on the South Side,
So
and
sorry.
South Side, and now West Side, because I've been about, I can now actually claim 50-50 of how many years I've been on each side. We're not going to put numbers to those years. That being said, that being said, I've been on the West Side for a number of years, and I live in the Garfield Park community. I've been a part of various churches here in Chicago, as well as nonprofits that are doing work around faith, religion, spirituality, sexuality, and race and justice. And so for me, pulling all those pieces together has been quite the long journey. I spent like 10 years being ex-gay and trying to be delivered. Like one Mr. Caldwell. I've also spent time like pursuing like abstinence or celibacy, initially as a part of just my own, like, how do I get healthier about myself, but then also as a part of some toxic values that come up in some churches. And then more recently, I'm in this space where I've kind of found home in fully affirming spaces where I'm not constantly on the firing line when it comes to being my whole, full, and authentic self. And so it's given me a place to really do that kind of advocacy that's important to me. I've always been a part of our LGBTQ plus community, but I've often kind of limited a lot of what I've said and done because of the kind of the way respectability comes up and the way that people kind of like do this litmus test of who can be in and who can be out. But now I'm like, you know what? It's a justice issue. Like we got people being affected by all kinds of justice issues that, because we don't talk about stuff, people are being harmed. And to me, if I say I love Jesus like I do, then I'm gonna show up where, I mean, let's just call a thing a thing. Jesus showed up with the prostitutes and the tax collectors. He was with the hustlers. And if I'm
Listen,
gonna be like Jesus, that's where I'm gonna show up in the world. So that's a little bit about me, and I am part of the Link Up Chicago collective as a spiritual resource and doing some of the tech for this hotline that we'll talk a little bit more about later. But let me kick it over to you, Keith. Tell us who you are.
Ah, well, so first of all, thank you, Darren, for. I feel like I've known Darren forever, and then like every time I hear Darren talk, I learn a little bit more about him. So I appreciate for who you for who you are in the world, and for sharing who you are in the world. I am currently the interim executive director for the Chicago Black Gay Men's Caucus, which is also an organization that I helped to found in 2005. So there's a lot of full circleness going on in my life. I am also a South Sider, born and raised in the Auburn Gresham area, and just recently bought a house about a mile from where I grew up in the Avalon Park area. So Chicago's home, South Side is home. I've lived in other parts of the city and in other cities, but this is where I am grounded. Um, and so, wow, I could talk. I could talk forever about the work that I've been involved in and am currently involved in. But what I'll say is that I am, everything that I've done up until now has led me to this moment where I'm really focused on uh, general wellness for Black, queer, gay, bisexual, same gender loving men, and very specifically in this city. I've done some work outside of the city and continue to do work outside of the city, but I feel like, home is where the heart is, and Chicago certainly has my heart. And I am very motivated and inspired to, do all that I can in the community that I live, love, work, and smash in. So that's why I'm here tonight. I think we originally said the F word, but we couldn't keep the F word, so we said smash. But
Yeah,
people know
Facebook
what we mean.
Facebook wasn't gonna let us get away with it, so
Yeah,
we limited ourselves just a little bit.
yeah.
Whew, fair enough. Fair enough. I don't know how to follow that. Uh, I don't know if I want to follow that,
Whatever, you ain't scared. You ain't scared.
but I'll hop in.
Kylan ain't
but
never
I'll hop
scared.
in. It is so wonderful to be here with everybody tonight. I will tell you, my name once again is Kylan Hooks. I answer to any pronoun said with respect, and that took me a long time to come to. Understanding that my navigating this world in a male body comes with it certain privileges that I had to learn about, that I had to get used to, and become aware of. I had to awaken to, if you will. And so a little bit of background on me. I'm from Ohio by way of Kansas City, Missouri. Landed in Chicago about 23 years ago, so I claim it. Chicago is home for me. It is the space that I've spent the most of my life in, all of my adult life, and therefore set down roots. And when I talk about that, I moved here as a young Black, gay, queer youth looking for connection and community in 1999, and I have found that tenfold. I have found that. And so I've committed my life, personal, professional, uh, to working within those spaces, doing a lot of advocacy around Black maleness, Black queer maleness, youth work. Those are some of the things that drive me and that I'm really passionate about. Um, I have been full transparency. I've been sober for a little over 17 years. So happy to talk about what that journey looks like and the parts of life that happened before that, right? Those things that sort of set me on that path. And right now I do a lot of work in communities where we talk about sort of what it's like to live a sober life, be on a path of recovery for whatever that means. I'm a harm reductionist through and through. Committed to, like, my journey isn't the only journey. It's not the only journey that works. It's not the only valid journey. It's just mine. And so very much committed to meeting folks where they are, exploring pathways of health and wellness and what that means for us as individuals, right? Because we're all unique. We're all different and have unique talents and gifts to bring. And those things need to be celebrated, regardless of gender, regardless of socioeconomic status. And so those are some of the things that I spent the last 23 years working in community, supporting, celebrating, and doing my best to show up authentically as an example for other folks. Right. So that's a little bit about me. And really, really, once again, grateful and glad to be here with y'all. So I'm excited, y'all.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and if we could jump right in, I love that you shared about being sober, and I'd love it if you think about sharing a little more of your story. Where I resonate with that is I did spend in some of those earlier seasons of my life, I spent several years in 12-step recovery. Mine was Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous, and many people haven't even necessarily heard of love addict or sex addict as a thing. And while recovery and addiction language, people disagree about what it means and how you define it and if it's even really a thing. I
Word.
think knowing, right, knowing that there are certain patterns in your life that create undesirable outcomes, and that if you are seeing a pattern in your life, it's okay to name it, to ask for help for it, to look at what the impact is and figure out, hey, like what's going on here. So yeah, Kylan, do you mind jumping in and maybe giving us a little bit of your story?
Yeah, Darren, I really appreciate that, and I resonate with it deeply. Right, is that if there are patterns in our lives that don't feel good, that are not leading us to healthy, celebratory outcomes, right? How do we get to take charge of that? And so, yeah, I'm happy to share a little bit about my
Yeah.
story, because really, it started when I moved here to Chicago. Um, Chicago was, first off, coming from a small town like I did, Chicago only existed on TV, y'all. Like, it was not a place where anybody actually lived. Like, growing up as a kid in a small town, it was just, the Sears Tower back then was just a facade. It was just a building. If you pulled that peak behind it, it was just going to be two-dimensional, right? And so I was amazed when I landed in Chicago in 1999 and looked around, and there were people living life,
Yeah.
right? Michigan Avenue, strolling up and down the street. I landed in one of those neighborhoods. We could talk about what that neighborhood was, right? I landed in one of them neighborhoods that I only thought existed on TV. And as sort of a process of getting there, I just had, how do I want to say this? I was young, right? I was a 22-year-old youth, and I was
Uh-huh.
looking for me. And I
Yeah.
arrived in a city where me could be anything and anybody, right? And it didn't have to be who I grew up with. And so I was looking for that reinvention, right?
Hmm.
And I was invited to some places.
Some
I was invited to
places.
some
A
places.
little vague there. Say, what's some places like?
What's some places like? These the places where people drove cars I never heard of.
Uh huh.
Right? People drove. First of all, in the city of Chicago, people drove, and I was like, "Hey, that ain't me. That is not me." Right? But people would go hard. People would go all night long. I wasn't used to going all night. Listen, midnight roll around, 2 a.m. roll around. I'm back. I'm back in bed in the small town. Midnight came around, and people were like, "Hey, what you about to do?"
Right. You was on the way out.
Right.
They was on the way out. So I found myself hanging out with them folks. Oh, y'all gonna be out all night. I can do that,
Hmm.
right? What that led to, though, was me using assistance, right? Me using substances to keep up with the lifestyle that they had already been accustomed to. They were ready for. They were ready for. And so for me, what happened was, I fell in love with the nightlife. I fell in love with the 2 a.m. crowds, the 4 a.m. spots, and then the spots that was open after 4 a.m. And I want to leave. I did not want to leave. That was my home. But all good things, right? At some point, what I was experiencing as good things had to come to an end.
Hmm.
And I found myself doing different things and hanging out with different crowds, not necessarily to stay out all night, but to get what I wanted to get, or at least what I thought I wanted to get. Hey, because I'm in a brand new city. I don't know nobody. I can be anybody who I want to be.
Right.
It don't matter. So eventually, really, I just started chasing that, right? I started chasing the crowd, the scene, the substance. I wasn't paying attention to what was going on for me, my own personal growth and development. I was about like, how can I get in where I can fit in?
Yeah.
How can I make you think that I'm somebody, right? That I'm somebody, and that's where it stops. How can I make you think that I'm somebody? Because I had no concept
Yeah.
of who I was when I got here as a youth, right? We're talking about young people, right? I now know, like, those are the same young people that I'm reaching out to today and looking to support on their journey through this.
Yeah.
That's right.
And so when I found myself there, and let me be clear, I didn't find myself there. A dear friend, found me for me.
Okay.
And she said,
Wow.
I don't think things are going so well for you. I need you to come somewhere with me.
Okay.
Now, mind you, hey, listen, I think I'm somebody. I think you think I'm somebody. So you finna take me to the spot where we gonna be somebody together.
Oh, it was a little switch up.
I thought, right, like I thought. I got to the spot, and what I heard, right, was you got a problem.
How did that feel?
That was not great. Remember, I think I'm somebody. I think you think I'm somebody. And now you telling me I'm not living right.
So you got kind of ambushed.
I got ambushed. I got ambushed. Lo and behold, I set myself up for that, right? Like, I opened those doors, right? But I got ambushed. And that was real. And really, quite honestly, Darren, that's what I needed to have happen, and that's why I say, like, my story is not for everybody, and it's not everybody's story, and I get that. My story was, listen, I got ambushed, and I needed to just take a break. I needed a pause. I was going hard for 6 years. I went hard.
Yeah.
So that ambush was a much welcome break. It was a much welcome sat down. Right? You get in here and you sat down. And so that's what I did.
Yeah.
That's what I did.
And like, if we could dig a little more into that first part of the experience, like, did you feel safe, like, in that space? Like, what kind of stories were you hearing in that meeting that made you feel like, oh, this might be a place for me?
Ooh, that's such a good question. I'm gonna tell you. I'm gonna tell you right now. I did not feel safe in that space. It was one other person in that space that looked like me. Thankfully, I was familiar with that person already. We had met. I was familiar with that person already. So we formed a little bit of a bond. But largely, I didn't feel safe in that space. What I did feel, once again, was that, like, that pressure valve release.
Yeah.
I felt like in that moment, just in that moment, in that early experience, I didn't have to convince you that I was somebody because you saw through that.
Yeah.
And the moment that I left right back out them doors, I knew passing you on the street, you were going to think I was somebody because that's what I wanted you to think and that's what I projected. But in that space, right, people are like, nah, that's not what it is. That's not what it is.
Yeah.
And so that's the experience that I could just breathe and just be like, just for a little bit of a time out of a day, I ain't got to be there. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And I will tell you, Darren, when I could recognize that there was one other person in the space that looked like me, somewhere subconsciously, I think I made that decision to stick around. Somewhere subconsciously, I can tell you right now, it wasn't a conscious thought for probably a few years after that, it wasn't a conscious thought, but subconsciously something said, stick around,
Yeah.
because more folks on their way.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And what's that going to be when they get here and they don't see anybody that look like them?
That's
They
right.
Right.
don't see anybody who's having that experience.
That's right.
So I tell you, that was largely, I like to say those first couple of years was happenstance, and it was subconscious, just the what is it, waiting to exhale, that deep
Yeah.
exhale, that deep sigh that was waiting for all them years, just came.
Mm.
Yeah. I I I think there's really something to be said about that, like having a it sounds like you had a vision of something that was more than the moment you were in. Um to realize one that you didn't have to present this false self, this outward, oh, I got it all together. I'm good. I can keep up. I can manage this. Um and that you were able to see maybe something, a different version of yourself down the road, a different version of who you could be. Um, is that accurate? Is that capturing part of
That's
the experience?
that's really a large part of it. That's really a large part of it. And I think one other piece that had been there for quite some time is that piece that I talked about earlier. Just knowing, right, that other people are going to have this experience. Like, and I want to be present for it for sure, but I also want to be one of those folks who celebrates that experience, who celebrates, all
Mhm.
right, cool, you here now, and whether you stay or go or come back later, right? You're
Yeah.
here, and you know I'm here, right?
Yeah.
And there's going to be more of us, and there are definitely more of us.
Yeah.
And so for me, as much as I want to say it was like a focus on myself, there was something else there. There was something else pulling, pushing, driving, right? That was like, hey, listen, you're not the only one, and you can't be the only one.
Right. Yeah. Um, for me, there's a kind of isolation in what I experienced. Because like I said, for those who are joining, we're talking a bit about our experiences with recovery and 12 step. And Keith's dogs are making their presence known in the
Of
background there.
course.
They in there.
Right, because they like, "We in this live stream too." Run tell that.
They in recovery.
But what we're talking about is like this bigger picture of what does it look like to even just, like, understand where you are and what's going on. For me, I was a part of churches that just had these very strict abstinence only kinda ideals about sex, and it was often super, super informed by, uh informed by these unrealistic expectations, right? It was like, oh,
Mm.
you don't need to worry about sex, you just need to worry about the kingdom of heaven. And so I kind of got indoctrinated into this real unhealthy relationship with my body, this relationship with my sexual drives, and on top of that, this horrible theology about my relationship the with my sexuality, my sexual orientation. So I'm in this church. I am 17, going on 18 years old, and being told, "Oh, if you want to go to heaven, you can't be gay." And for the first time in my life, I had shame about my sexual orientation, and that shame was the beginning of me beginning to to sneak and engage with my sexuality. I mean, we
Mm.
don't live in a safe society where a 17-year-old at that point could come out and just be out and all this. So I'd been in the closet before, but somebody had one of my roommates actually had threatened to out me in college. And I was like, you have no power here. And so I came out because what I was not about to do is be living in fear of my own sexual orientation.
Mhm.
And so after I came out, and my computer's acting up here. But after I came out, I had this like new connection with this church, and I found all this sense of purpose and belonging. And people were like, "Oh, God's gonna use you. God's gonna do all this great stuff." But in all of that, what I was also finding out is I was slowly becoming part of a cult, and I was
Mm.
becoming part of this really unhealthy, toxic place where bit by bit, more and more of my life was dismissed, diminished, and whatever. And so that led to me kind of reacting by taking time back, by basically sneaking out, by by anonymous sexual hookups, because all the negative that was being pumped into me in Jesus' name in my church, I then took that as, oh, these guys couldn't like me. No one could like me. No one could find me attractive. And I began to like have these increasingly risky engagements. And by risk, I mean like hooking up in places where I didn't have anybody's telephone number or their name or an address. If I could talk to you on a party line and find you, I would go and hook up. And at one point, I ended up getting robbed at gunpoint in my car. And being a college student, I was broke.
Wow.
Real,
And I had
real.
$120 to my name. And this man, I didn't have any cash, like not even like the change this like in between the seats. Like I didn't have no cash. I had $120 in the bank. He went through my wallet and saw my bank card and was like, "We going to the bank." So he's having me drive to the bank, gun pointing my side. And we get to the bank and I'm pull up the screen and it's showing what my balance is, $120. I didn't even have a job at that point, so I didn't have anything else coming in. But while we're at he asked me for 60 of the 120, and I was like, "Wait a minute. How? That felt like grace. Like, what? How come you ain't taking all of it?" But whatever.
Mm.
Okay, you got your 60, and then he's having me drive around, and he says to me, "You ain't even supposed to be out here. This ain't where you supposed to be." Now, me being the good church
Well,
boy
give
that
me
I
my
am,
money back.
right?
Sorry, I don't
See,
understand.
I needed a Keith in my life to be like, "No." But in that
Fair
moment,
trade.
right? In that moment, I was
Real.
just like, "What? Okay, there's something going on here." And even
Mm.
though my church has utterly condemned me and told me that I'm horrible, I feel like God is doing something else here and right now. Um, and so that started me seeking help, but the help that was available wasn't helpful. The help that was available was more condemnation, more guilt, more shame.
Real.
And I share that story to say, one, like we find ourselves in all kinds of crazy situations. And I had planned on going home and being utterly silent about everything that happened. But a close friend said, "No, if you don't say something, if you don't, talk about what's going on, then I'm going to tell." And they were threatening to tell the pastor. And even though that church and that context and all that experience wasn't healthy for me or helpful to me, it was an important learning season of my life where I realized that shame has like deadly effects, and that these
Mm.
demands that were being put on me were not helpful. They were never putting more and more shame on me was never going to change the choices I was making. It was never going to change uh, my life. And so at that point, eventually, I got more and more involved with my church's change efforts, which was abstinence, cutting off people, getting rid of friends and family, moving away. And none of that worked. But uh, when I left that church, because I realized something wasn't going on, and I had good friends around me who realized this place isn't really healthy. And there's a much longer version of that story, but when I left that church, what I found myself in the midst of was having to make my own choices about what I would and wouldn't do. And one of the things that became profoundly helpful to me, and this will tie into what we're doing with Link Up Chicago, me setting my own baseline of what was good and what was not good, what was healthful or healthy and what was not for me. That was the most important thing I could do, and that's what I get. One of the things that I took away from the Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous group that I was a part of, because there were some people in there who had like uh, records and they were registered sex offenders, and their bottom line was very different than other people who serially would flirt with somebody who wasn't their spouse or committed partner. And we both had commonality. Like it wasn't like, oh, well, I'm not as bad as you, or you're not as bad as me, or you're worse than me. Instead, it was like we all have something that we're struggling with, and it causes us to make choices that we don't like.
Right.
And none of us can tell you what your bottom line is, but we can create a space where you can talk about it, where you can be real about it, where if you messed up on the way here, or if you haven't messed up in 40 years, you are the same welcome and you are the same valid. And what I've found since then is that uh, that agency, that ability to choose for ourselves, is the most effective thing in me living a healthy life that is not going to keep me in shame and guilt spirals. Um, but I feel like I'm talking a lot. What y'all?
No, that's so real. That's so real, though. That's so real. Thank you for taking us through that. Because Darren, when you talk about that shame and guilt, we know that that is the killer, right?
Yeah,
Like that is the thing, right? That increases those unhealthy, unproductive behaviors,
yeah,
right? It's not necessarily the thing itself. Oftentimes, it's the impact of the judgment that comes along with it. So challenging, right? So
yeah.
challenging. And so I really appreciate you taking us through that journey because that is really powerful. And I appreciate you naming those things.
Yeah,
That's
for
what's up.
sure. I want to acknowledge just, the conversation that's happening in the chat and say hey to folks and thanks for dropping in. For some reason, Darren, and you're the administrator here, I can't contribute to the chat, so I'm just able to read. But I do want to acknowledge that there are a lot of great folks in the chat saying a lot of things and echoing a lot that's being said here. So thank you all for joining in and for being a part.
Yeah, and Keith, if you have your phone or another device handy, just turn the volume down and open up the stream, and you should be able to respond on your device.
Oh, I don't want to
Listen,
mess
I'm
it up.
just finding that out, so I'm about to hop in.
Yeah, because we do have some good comments, and I'm gonna go to the comments for a second and acknowledge a few of them. Derek talks about how he says your story is your story, and can't nobody take that. 20 plus years for me. It took county jail and the judge to set me on a path of recovery.
Wow.
So appreciate that share. Um, our favorite, Mr. King, is talking about great combo, guys. Thank you for being here. We got Tim
He's
on,
one of
who's
our favorites.
one of, yes. Sorry.
Real talk, real talk.
Because Derek, Didi is also a favorite. So thank you,
Right.
Didi, for being here.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I had to do that.
That's all right. That's all right. Um, but yeah, we're open to taking questions or sharing more comments as we go. And this, like I said, this is an open conversation. Um, part of why we're here, and maybe Keith, you can introduce us a bit more to what this Link Up Chicago thing that we've referenced a little bit is and why it exists. But part of how we're here, why we're here, is that we realize that there are things that are affecting our community as Black, gay, bisexual, men who have sex with men, same gender loving folks, and addiction is a really important part of that. And it's not just, oh well, if we fix this one thing, everything's going to be better, right? So many times there's programs and there's resources that focus microscopically on one little thing, and you're like, well, that's not all of who I am. Like, I'm a whole
Whew.
person. I don't just want to be known as this one thing. And so we're trying to put together resources and events like this where we're going to talk about our whole selves. And so that's why the title is about living, loving, working, and smashing in the community, because we gonna talk about all the things. So Keith, tell
Even though
us.
we haven't gotten there yet.
We
We
haven't
haven't.
gotten there yet,
We have to
Not
do a part
yet.
two. So next
but
week is
I
part
need
two.
you to share this
Yeah.
link. We got a few people watching. I need you to share it. We got 20
I
minutes left in
did.
this.
I did,
I'm
boss.
talking about the people who's watching.
Oh, sorry.
Go
And
ahead,
next
go
week we
into
only
it,
talking
y'all.
about smashing. Next week is
Oh,
just about
okay.
smashing.
Okay. Well,
Listen,
Part
go. We
two.
gonna make that transition.
hey, we can, because Keith is ready.
Listen. No, I do think that that is an important conversation to have, and we only have an hour here tonight, so it's it's important that we just sort of plan to pick up. But what I will say is, I appreciate both of you for sharing your stories and your journeys. Link Up Chicago really does exist to find ways to better support folks in our community and the folks who are supporting them. Like one of the most the thing that like I don't want to minimize any parts of your story, Kylan, but one of the things that stuck out most to me was the fact that it was a friend, a loved one who said, "Hey, you think you are showing this, but this is what I'm seeing, and we need
Real.
to get you some help." And that person was able to reach you in a way that other folks may not be able to. But I think oftentimes those folks in our communities don't necessarily know what to do, don't know where the resources are, don't know the appropriate way to sort of breach that kind of conversation. And so I think a part of the reason why Link Up Chicago exists is not just to support folks who may be,
Mm,
using
mm.
substances or in a rough spot in their lives, but also to support the people who support them. Because I don't think we ever really think about, provide a space for those folks, right? And so I think that's critically important.
That's real. You're absolutely right. I appreciate that Link Up has created this space, right? Because we talk about that community. That community impact is where it's at, right? And whether that's chosen family, given family, whomever who might be looking for that as a resource to get connected to, like we need to exist, y'all. Like we
There you
need to
go.
exist, right? And we need to be connected to one another in order to help folks make that shift, right? I would have never made that
Absolutely.
shift had it been somebody else, somebody I didn't know, because
Absolutely.
once again, like that person's opinion, that's not where I am. That's not what matters to
Right.
me.
That's right.
Um,
Yeah.
but that's so important. I'm so grateful for this conversation and for y'all, um, and all those who's jumping in the room. I see y'all. Thank you. So
Right.
glad y'all joined the conversation,
Love
Kevin.
to see it.
Yes, Pastor Reverend Tyndale, who is a leader in our community on so many fronts.
Hmm.
I was at a strategic planning retreat for the Chicago Black Gay Men's Caucus this weekend. He's a founding member of the caucus as well, but he's also the founder of Onyx. And I think we don't give folks enough of their flowers while they're still here, right? And so we have safe spaces in our communities because of folks like Reverend Tyndale. So I just want to
That's right.
publicly say thank you. I fight with my elders a lot in a loving kind of like, you know, Charles Nelson and I were at an event, and folks know Charles Nelson. I call him the grandfather of the gays, right? But it is with love and respect and admiration for the ground that they've laid, the spaces I get to so freely walk into, and the person I get to be is because of the things that they did before me.
That's
And
right.
we have to sort of we're uh, we're pushing towards this, to something different, right? We're in a newer space. The people who are coming up now won't have the same struggles that we have, but they will have different struggles. And we've got to adjust and adapt to be able to make sure that we're meeting those needs and tending to their struggles, not thinking about them in the same way maybe that we've thought about them or that we had to deal with them, but in the ways that they're having to deal with them.
Yeah. So let's pivot a little bit. Um
Hey.
because Tim is like, we talking about smashing?
Smashing next week. We can start now. Give
Right.
a teaser, a
It'll
10-minute
be
teaser.
it'll
Well,
be a
teaser.
to be continued conversation, Tim.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. But I think that's an important part of this conversation because
That's right.
sex is so a part of so many things that happen. And I'm not just talking about like physically having sex, but also like the pursuit of sex, like even how we like build friendships. I don't know about you, but there are people who some of my first friendships were people that I pursued sexually because I didn't know how else to connect with other gay men. Like where else? And then even after that, sometimes the places that we find other gay men are only in a sexual context. And sex is good, sex is great. Let us thank him for our food. Amen. Um, um, but also like there's still the need for us to like connect as more than just sex, right? Like by all means, smash in whatever ways are best for you or don't, because ace folks and aromantic folks, I'm here for you too.
Amen.
Um, but like let's talk a little bit about what it means for us to be our authentic selves when we're working, right? Like we're doing this work in community. We have friends and associates and so forth. Do you find that you try to keep your life on the down low, or is it more integrated into what you do? What does it look like to be a grown man in these streets out here in 2020?
Darren, you playing with that question though.
I'm playing.
You playing with that question. I'm gonna open it up and I'm gonna pass it on
That's what he
because
said.
That's
Darren, you and I
that's what he
are
did.
new. Look.
I quit. I quit. I quit.
Darren, you and I are newer friends.
We're new friends.
Keith and I have known each other for quite some time.
Quite.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
But I will tell you, I have no qualms, and this is something that I carry into all aspects of my life, whether it is the youth work that I do, the recovery
Mhm.
work that I do, is that I need my sex to be transparent. I need my energy, the ways I get down to be transparent. You said this earlier, I think, Darren.
Mhm.
Like when it's out in the streets, it has no power here. When you
Mhm.
know who I am coming through the doors, you can't shame me with that.
Mhm.
And that's another process I think of building and learning and unlearning and deconstructing. But it's a process of like, what are those things, right, that I've been told I need to feel shameful about that I can step into and own, right? How can I show up? And for me, that shows up in a lot of different ways. That's me being open about my kink practice.
Mhm.
Hey, I get into some freaky stuff. That's I need
Yes.
you to know about. I need you to know that about me.
Like what?
You know what? Well, Darren mentioned food earlier, and I can't tell you all the things that could be done with food. I can show you though. I
Listen,
can show you.
on
On the
Project
on the
Vita,
next episode.
we
So
had a whole episode. Shout out to Project Vita. We had a whole episode where we had a demonstration of food play on Facebook Live. Like,
nobody
what you
tagged me.
what you want to do? I'm gonna drop the link in the comments after this. But it's been funny to be a professional who's producing content that is sexually explicit. I was in church on past Sunday saying I was talking to some other worship leaders, and it was like, yeah, I'm working on this show, and then I'm trying to do this call-in line, and I was like, so the call-in line is for is a resource for people who use meth or engage with meth, who are black, gay, and bisexual. And the way the eyebrows went up on the guys that I was sharing it with, I was like, but that's not the spicy stuff. So it was
Right.
like, yeah, hey, listen, what you want to learn about? I'm here. I'm a resource. I'm a teacher.
And that's it, right? Like to walk into these streets being a resource and a teacher. And if I
Hmm.
don't know, I'm gonna get you connected so that that shame has no home in you.
Right.
That shame has no home in you.
Mhm.
And
Exactly.
so that's the way that I show up. I'm ready to have that conversation. So Keith, I told you I was gonna open up the conversation and pass it on. So here we go.
Yeah, Keith, what's popping?
The older I get, the less fucks I have to give, right?
Mm.
But also sort of, always mindful of um, what it means to create and maintain effective boundaries, right? And that's always a difficult space to navigate, right? Because you want to make sure that you preserve the sanctity and the safety of any space that you try to create for others, right?
That's right.
And so that becomes really, really tricky because what happens when for this is an example, and it hasn't happened. So I like the example because it's not necessarily real in the sense, right? But what happens if I'm at a Chicago Black Gay Men's Caucus book club meeting and there's somebody there that I want to smash with or who wants to smash with me, right?
You
What does
preaching?
what does that mean, right?
Mm-hmm.
Does as currently the interim executive director and a founding member, right? So we grown. There's nothing necessarily that prohibits us from smashing, but let's say we smash and it is horrible,
Word.
right? I
Mm-hmm.
have potentially, I'm going to come back because it's a space I created and I'm very comfortable in.
Mm-hmm.
I have potentially ruined the safe space for someone else.
Yeah.
And even if it
Whew.
was horrible on their part, which, probably was, um,
Look.
I have potentially ruined that safe space for somebody else. So I have to be mindful of that. And maybe that means that there's a conversation that happens, right? Like, look, we can smash, but if I don't call you tomorrow, you still need to come back to this same safe space. No, that's probably not the way to approach the conversation.
But
But
that's some
may
practical advice.
for sure. But I'm just saying, maybe don't say it in that way.
Yeah, maybe not.
But that's a thing that I have to always be mindful of, and which also
Yeah.
means that even outside of that space in the city of Chicago, I have to be mindful of that because in the same way that like there's a smash session, something goes wrong, but that person needs a resource that I'm connected to. They come to that resource, see me, and like he didn't call me back or like his sex was whack. No, ain't nobody saying that, but
Not
again,
not now
just
he said check the Yelp reviews.
again with and maybe that's a service we need to create, right? So we don't even get into it to begin with. I saw your Yelp reviews on Grinder, and no, just no. It say you don't show up on time. When
I'm
you show
dead.
up, you don't have
Look.
lube. I
I
don't
am
know what's going
dead.
on,
Look.
but
Not not
Look.
it's a real
not I
thing,
had to
right?
wait while
I
at the
think I
front
lost
door.
sound. I can hear the shit.
You have 3 minutes to answer the door, otherwise your ride will be
I
canceled.
totally lost sound, FYI. I cannot hear anything.
You can't?
And
Okay.
this sucks. I don't know if it's on me or what it
Okay.
is, but maybe it's
We
just
can
like
hear
it's
We
you.
can
time.
hear you, so keep
Maybe I should
talking.
shut up. Darren probably muted me himself.
I no, I
Back in the
nah, I
day.
haven't. But I'm a
He
I'm a
can
private message Keith. Um
do
and
that
then
because he can't hear us.
Hold on, I'm checking my preferences.
Me too, Keith. Me too.
we out here in
I'm
these
gonna cut this
internet
off.
streets. Um maybe his headphones died. Maybe that's what had happened.
That was weird. I can hear you all now though. Now I got
Okay,
Okay.
headphones.
maybe your headphones died. You have to charge it up. Okay, come on, you better fluff.
It's,
I got headphone here, honey.
Okay, but
it's
you
looking
you
great.
I don't want to lose this very valuable insight that you shared about how um we need to like create the space for these harder conversations or engage with people in a way that um that they are still safe in the community, right?
That's right. That's right.
We need to it's you do what you as two consenting and able-minded adults are going to choose to do, but do it in a way where it has honor, if you will, to it, where it like hey, if you have an issue, you should still be able to come to me, whether or not like something's still going on with us between us personally or not. If you, because this is, let me just diverge a little bit. I see this thing where people have this ownership mentality of who they have smashed in the past.
Mm, mm.
And it becomes this thing, well, I can't be friends with them because they smashed my ex. And it's like your ex from like 5 years ago that you can't stand. Why? Why does that matter? Well, that's against the bro code. First of all, who wrote that bullshit? Like,
Well, now
And did we discuss? But did we
but
discuss?
right,
Did
that's the
we?
part. It's the discussion. It's the part where we have set boundaries and set like intentions about what's important to us. Because listen, if you say that person is important to me for the rest of my life, I can respect that
that's right. That's a
Oh
if
yeah.
conversation.
that's the friendship we have. Um, But if it's just, oh no, it's automatic. You should just know. I shouldn't have to tell you. That's how we create these cycles of just woundedness and hey, you can't trust nobody in Chicago. You can't blah 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 blah. It's like no, because we've done made some very unrealistic expectations for ourselves and for others. And I feel like if we're going to live in the same city and we are at best 10% of the population as gay folks, even smaller if you just count the male identified ones, then at some point you're gonna run into your friend's ex. So we need to be thinking about. And then the other part is maybe they not ex. Maybe y'all just smashed. Let's just be honorable. Let's make some choices about how we engage. And if you have a mindset of well, I don't want to smash anybody that somebody else smashed, then you shouldn't be hooking up. Maybe, maybe. Go ahead, push back on it.
I mean, no, you're right. You're right. That's real. I'm just gonna co-sign. I'm not gonna push back. I'm gonna co-sign because what you're talking about, Darren, is the communication,
Mm-hmm.
right? We're talking about the consent that needs to be present, not just in those romantic, sexual situations, but in our friendship, right? Like our platonic connections.
Exactly.
Is if you and me, if we good Judies, and I know your ex, who you still mad at, is your number one. We need to have a conversation about how I can engage or not, right, and keep
Mm-hmm.
our relationship solid. If that's my interest, right? If that's what I'm interested in doing,
Right.
right? But part of that, even the experience of not being interested, is that we're not having the conversations.
Mm-hmm.
We're not getting real and honest,
Right.
right? And I say we because I know I catch myself in it too, right? I catch myself in it too, and I gotta like, oh, hold up. What feels to me more important? Does it feel
Right.
like our brotherhood, right? Our platonic connection? Does it feel like me trying to smash over here? What is that? And it might
Yeah.
change, right? Like those things might change situationally, contextually, right? They might
Mm-hmm.
change. But if I've trained myself, right, to even just explore the conversation, we can get somewhere. We can get somewhere
Right.
together.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I'm most interested in. Is like, how do we engage in this conversation? Whether it is the two of us talking about smashing, or are we talking about what it looks like to carry on our friendship with these other connections that we know are going to pop up eventually, inevitably, kind of like you
Right.
shared, Darren. It's
Yeah.
inevitable.
Can we distinguish next week between smashing and making love?
Say it one more time, Keith. We can barely hear you.
Can we distinguish next week between smashing and making love?
We got a whole lot
Hmm.
to unpack there.
There's a
We
lot.
A
do.
whole lot.
We
And
do.
that is a full episode.
It is. And we are actually like out of time for today. Um, right? Like that where did where did the time go?
It's so good though.
Yes. So we are going to be back. Our schedule um it'll be Tuesday nights. I'm not sure just yet if it's going to be next Tuesday. I'll check in with the guys offline, or if it'll be once a month. Or, you know what? Actually, I'd love it right now. If you are watching or if you're watching this in the replay, leave us a comment. Let us know. Would you want to hear more of this weekly, every other week, once a month? Let me know. Let me know what you're feeling in the comments. And we are going to we're gonna check some things out. In the meantime, before we go, I
Wait,
do want.
somebody in the chat said time is a construct. Keep going.
Yes. See,
You in
that's
the
my
right
friend
place.
Leanne's. Yes.
You in the right
Uh
place.
Make sure y'all also keep going. If you could repeat that to them, then we could talk.
yes. So we are going to continue this. This is just a debut premiere episode. There's so much more to come. We're going to have guests. We're going to have even more in depth, spicy conversations. We want to hear your questions and what kind of topics you want to discuss or want to hear from us about. If there's certain people you'd like to see featured on the show, let us know. There's a few ways you can keep in touch with us. We are building a lot of this as we go. So I do want you to know that we are on Facebook at LinkUp Chicago, and you can message us in that inbox there. You also can use we have our individual social media handles here on the screen. And lastly, yeah, we'll also be on YouTube soon. I just have to finish getting that set up because I'm busy. I got a lot of stuff going. But that being said, thank you again to everybody who joined today. Thank you for being on. We want to see and hear more from you. Check us out on Twitter because again, all this stuff is in progress. So you could be one of our first. Yep, that's my reminder. It's time to go off the air. You could be one of our first 100 subscribers. We would give you all the hearts and make all the noise. But yeah, thank you so much again, guys, for being here. And we are going to see you next time. Say bye.
Bye, everybody. Thanks for
Peace.
being here. I love you, Darren. I love you, Kylan.
I love you, Keith.
I
I love
love
you,
you,
Kylan.
Keith. I love you, Darren. Thank you.
Bye. Good night.
All the love, y'all. All the love.